Today we'll be doing things a little bit different. We'll be taking a look at two keyboard type covers for the iPad Pro and Surface Go, both made by the same manufacturer. Now check the timestamps below that like button if you just want to see the material related to the product you are shopping for. Let's get into it. Both of the products we're reviewing today are made by Inateck and can be found on Amazon for less than $50. And if you're interested in purchasing either of these products by the end of this review, then please use our affiliate links to do so. Let's kick things off with the Inateck iPad Pro type cover, which not only is an attached keyboard, but a case as well. Outside of it, you have this leather-like black material, which is very minimalistic, very professional looking. The Inateck Surface Go keyboard, on the other hand, is a little bit thicker of a keyboard, but it is not a case, and this isn't necessarily the fault of Inateck, it's more just the design of the Surface lineup. They have this included kickstand, which actually makes finding a case for them relatively difficult. It does have this nice Alcantara type material. Now I don't know if this is actual, the genuine soft touch material that Microsoft uses on the first party keyboard. Unlike the iPad type cover, the Surface Go type cover has an included trackpad. You can left and right click, and it supports multi-point gesture controls. The iPad Pro type cover has a 100-hour battery life and takes just 2.5 hours to fully charge, and you can continue using the keyboard while it's charging. What's more, the iPad will wake and sleep depending on if the type cover is open or closed, which is nice to see. There are lots of magnets included with this type cover. They will hold the iPad in two predetermined angles and will also hold the type cover to the iPad itself when it's closed. This also has a large battery life at 750 milliamp hours, and they say it's good for 180 days of standby time. The Surface Go keyboard also has magnets involved, but they are only used to hold the type cover to the device, and this will lock the Surface Go, but it will not automatically put it to sleep, which is something the first party keyboard does very well. And even though this will go to sleep on its own after a few minutes of inactivity, it will not turn on automatically. You have to use the physical power button. And probably the killer feature of this type cover is the fact that it's backlit, which is something missing from the first party type cover. And you're probably wondering, won't that drain the battery life? I'll get to that more in a minute, but to mitigate that, the backlighting will actually shut off in just 30 seconds of inactivity, and you can adjust the brightness levels. Applying and removing the case from the iPad Pro was extremely easy and took very little effort. Now, because this is a case, it obviously offers excellent scratch protection, but it's so low profile there's no interior padding, so this would not bode very well in a counter height fall. Getting the type cover connected to the iPad Pro for the first time was very easy. It showed up right away, and I never had a single issue with a missed connection or a lost keystroke. Typing with this keyboard was very satisfying, and it gave the illusion that the keystroke was much longer than it actually was. It felt almost like using a real keyboard. I was consistently searching around for a trackpad subconsciously, just my fingers were looking around for one. But of course, having one of the best touchscreens on the market right there, easily accessible, almost makes up for it. Now, the manufacturer says the standby time with this type cover is about 90 days, but this is one of the first times where the manufacturer's claims are way underestimated. I charged it, I started using it, and then of course we're moving studios right now. I put it back in the box and I haven't touched it in like 3 months. And it still had more than 75% charge. The added function row was incredibly helpful, especially navigating iOS. It has all of your standard functions such as media controls, volume, and brightness, but it also has a home key, a lock key, a search key, a screenshot key, a dedicated Siri key, language adjustment, and a virtual keyboard toggle. While the two magnetic locking positions are appreciated, they really make almost a negligible difference in the angle of the iPad. I would have appreciated the steeper angle, and then of course have much more keyboard real estate in exchange. And something to keep in mind, because the keyboard goes to sleep when you remove the iPad from a locked position, it will actually disconnect just by moving from one lock position to another. Now let's switch gears back over to the Surface Go type cover. The first party type cover has an exceptional trackpad. It's not quite at the same level as MacBooks and MacBook Pros, but it's still pretty darn good. It's a little bit smaller, which may not seem like a big deal, but in practice this actually makes a huge difference. The typing experience in this keyboard was also kind of a miss for me. In all fairness, the standard Surface Go type cover isn't exactly something to write home about, but the travel distance on these keys is pretty shallow, especially considering how thick this thing is. If you look closely at the keyboard, you may notice this glaring red flag that I picked up on right away. There is a power button situated directly between the delete and backspace keys. You have to press the power button for 3 seconds to get it to turn on or off. Now in practice, that did actually seem to work. I never accidentally shut off the keyboard while typing, even though I have pressed it several times by accident. It seemed to ignore that. The magnets that hold the keyboard to the Surface Go are incredibly strong. Obviously, you want to be able to hold the Surface Go and still have the keyboard hang. What you can actually do, but I wouldn't recommend doing this, is you can suspend the Surface Go by the keyboard. As I mentioned previously, the magnets will also hold the keyboard to the Surface, which doesn't seem like a big deal until you realize the first-party keyboard doesn't do that. I thought this was just like a technical thing that they couldn't achieve because you didn't have something magnetic at that portion of the screen where the keyboard can attach to, but apparently that's not the case. Definitely have some questions for Microsoft on that one. The connection of this type cover was also something that gave me issues. Getting this thing connected to the Surface Go for the first time was a nightmare. I tried all kinds of things before it finally just seemed to connect on its own. Since then, it's seemed to do okay. For the most part, it's been pretty good. Now we get to the battery, which is probably my biggest issue with the device. Now the battery life is actually pretty good, and that's obviously a good thing because it doesn't connect to the Surface Go directly, which is unfortunate. This is the biggest difference between the first-party type cover and basically any other type cover out there, is that the type cover cannot draw its power directly from the Surface Go. I imagine this is some sort of licensing thing that Microsoft has to protect their own first-party products, but for whatever reason, none of the type covers I've seen from third-party sources have been able to draw their power directly from the Surface Go, which means you need to have an internal battery that needs to be recharged. Now, the battery does last a while, and if you're going to be using that backlighting, you'll be recharging it a lot more often than that. But let's talk more about that backlighting. It seems sufficiently bright when you look at the light that's spilling out from under the keys, but for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to penetrate the symbols, the legends on the keycaps very well. It doesn't have any lighting effects, but you can choose between 7 different color presets, and as I mentioned, you can adjust the brightness for whatever setting you're in. The iPad Pro is a tablet pretending to be a computer, and the Surface Go is a computer pretending to be a tablet. The two keyboard covers we reviewed today accentuate this distinction and provide functionality that complements their respective use cases. That being said, I can really only recommend one of these two products. While I do appreciate the backlighting on the Surface Go type cover, the fact that I've had so many quality control issues and that it needs an internal battery, needs to be recharged, are two major points against it, especially when the first-party option is only $30 more expensive on any given day, and that doesn't need to be recharged. It's just one more thing that you don't have to remember to do. So, given the $30 savings, I'm not entirely sure it's worth it. The iPad Pro type cover, on the other hand, is the same $50 price, but in this case, there is no first-party option that stays charged. Anything you get will have to be charged in some way. So it's not like it's competing with some alternative first-party option. And that $50 you spend on it really completely changes the iPad experience, while no person in their right mind would ever consider even the highest-end iPad Pro a computer. Having a keyboard definitely makes it perform much more like one. Well, thanks for watching, guys. If you appreciated this video, then go ahead and give it a like and make sure you're subscribed so you know when our newest content is ready to watch. And we have our first of our shirts in today, which is awesome. If you want to check those out, check the link down below where you can purchase those, and those help us out directly. And watch these other videos if you want to see other product reviews, keyboards, type covers, headphones, monitors, all kinds of things. If you want to see those reviews, check those out as well, and use our affiliate links if you want to purchase any of the products that we mentioned today. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.